Today we are going to learn about Jacobean period. Previously we have recorded some 5 lectures in which we have discussed different literary ages. Jacobean period begins in 1603 and it ends in 1625. We can see in the chart Jacobean period falls in the column of Renaissance. This age begins when Elizabethan age ends in 1603. Before discussing the literary forms, literary genres, we need to know about the political background of England during this period. This period has been named after King James of England as Jacobean period. He was a distant relative of Queen Elizabeth I of England. James is indeed the English version of the Latin word Jacobus, and Jacobean is the adjective of Jacobus. King James, we see, grew bad relations with his parliament. Indeed, King and his supporters were of the view that King's power came directly from God and should not be challenged. Instead, the parliamentarians had a different view, and they were of the view that the parliament should be given more power and supervision over monarchy. So they controlled the funds. That created a sort of disagreement between the king and the parliament, because the king needed funds for the royal expenses for different wars that the country was engaged in. So another problem that the king was confronting, he was a Protestant himself, and he was ruling different groups of Christianity like Puritans, Catholics and Anglicans. On the other hand, the parliament demanded for reforms in the Church of England. So all these things created a kind of bad experience for the king, and this led to severe disagreements, and the whole atmosphere, political atmosphere, was actually a kind of risk, and it could be seen that it would lead to some sort of civil war. Anyhow, so we see the literature of the age. We find different sort of genres like tragedy, comedy and tragicomedy, satire, prose writing and metaphysical poetry. Tragedy, comedy, tragicomedy, satire, prose, all they existed in the previous age, Elizabethan era. So these forms continued in Jacobean era too. Among these different genres, we see tragedy is the dominant form of literature, and it was, of course, the dominant genre or literary form during the Elizabethan age too. What is tragedy? Tragedy is a kind of drama that focuses on serious sort of themes. As far as the comedy is concerned, its entire focus is on the entertainment of the audience. Tragicomedy is the mingling of tragedy and comedy together, and we get tragicomedy. Satire is a kind of literary form that uses humor, irony, exaggeration to criticize or expose flaws in people or in society. As far as the prose is concerned, prose is the arrhythmic form of the language, or we can say it's the natural form of the language, and we find different sort of prose writings, particularly essays in this age. We will be having a discussion regarding all these forms later on. Here we are just defining them. Here we have got a new type of poetry, and that is known as metaphysical poetry, that entirely began and developed in Jacobean era. Well, so we also see different sort of violations of the classical forms, rather norms, regarding tragedy in this particular era. What sort of violations do we see Jacobean drama actually has some sort of extreme violence, and it has revenge scenes in it, and that were performed on the stage. Previously, when we look into the classical drama or classical tragedy, all these revenge or extreme violence scenes were performed off the stage. So this is one of the violations of the classical drama in Jacobean era. Moreover, we see there are different subplots beside the complex plot, and as well as dark and pessimistic themes are also introduced in Jacobean era. Whereas in the classical drama we find just single plots, though they were also complex, right? But we did not have any sort of pessimistic or dark sort of scenes in classical tragedy. Let us discuss about the plot as well over here. Plot is actually a sequence of events that make up the whole story in a play, in a novel, in a drama, or in a short story. And why is complex plot emphasized in the classical tragedy? Because it contains two important ingredients, and that is the first is the reversal of fortune, and the second is the recognition. What happens? The tragic hero suddenly finds that there is some sort of shift from good to bad in his circumstances, and the second thing that is highlighted is found in the complex plot, that is the recognition. What is recognition? It is a kind of moment, right, when the tragic hero realizes some sort of truth about his identity or his actions or the real cause of his suffering. These two important ingredients together, they cause pity and fear, and we know how important pity and fear is in tragedy. So in these dramas, these subplots were introduced that were creating some sort of violation with the classical norms of the classical drama. We find another issue here, that is the dramas, they were not performed in a single day, rather they occurred in more than one day, and these sort of violations were there, as well as the different locations were also used in dramas. So the emphasis in classical tragedy is upon three unities. What are the three unities? Three unities, that the unity of action means the action should be performed in a single day, and unity of place, the action should be performed on a single location, and unity of action, there should be a single plot. So all these violations we can find in such Jacobean dramas. For example, we have one drama as the Revenger's Tragedy, that was published in 1603 and was written by Thomas Middleton. This is only one example. We can find these violations in almost all tragedies that were written and performed during Jacobean era. In classical tragedy, we should see how does Aristotle defines is tragedy. According to Aristotle, it is an imitation of an action that is serious, complete, and of a certain magnitude. It should be performed in action, not in narration, and he also emphasizes over the embellishment of the tragedy or the action with different sort of songs, scenes, with incidents that has to arouse emotions of pity and fear. and that have to bring about the catharsis of these emotions. When we see an imitation of an action, so Aristotle's emphasis is not just copying an happening or an action. When he says that it is an imitation of an action, he actually is saying at the same time that it is some sort of structured and artistic sort of imitation of an action, and that imitation is complete, and it has a certain magnitude, and it is performed dramatically, it's not performed in narratively, right, and it is embellished with different sort of scenes and incidents. Why all these things? He emphasizes indeed all these things, when they have such sort of coordination, so there could be then arousal of emotions of pity and fear, and that pity and fear sort of emotions actually bring about the catharsis, and the catharsis is the ultimate goal of Aristotle, that the tragedies should arouse such sort of pity and fear emotions, and the catharsis of emotions should occur. Well, we also see in Aristotelian tragedies that there are 6 elements that he emphasizes over all these important elements. According to him, the first important element is plot, the second is character, the third is thought, diction, songs, spectacles. He says that these 6 elements actually deal with the effectiveness of a tragedy. And when we say effectiveness of a tragedy, what does this effectiveness mean? It means if these 6 important elements are present in the same order as he has discussed them, then there would be a great effect in the tragedy. And why he considers plot to be the first in this order? Because plot is the most important thing. And without plot, there would be no place for characters, thought, diction, whatsoever in the sequence. So plot is the most important thing. As well as he discusses the importance of the 3 unities. Why are they so much important? Because they deal with the structural composition of a tragedy. So according to him, these 6 important elements as well as the 3 unities should be, rather must be observed, must be brought in a tragedy when the tragedy has got these sort of important characteristics. That would be called a great effective tragedy. Anyhow, all these important things were violated. So we have discussed plot. There's no need to discuss it again. Complex plot I have also discussed in the previous slide, and I have discussed, I can only just read it for my students once, that the complex plot has got 2 important things, a reversal and as well as the recognition, right? Reversal, the tragic heroes finding himself in circumstances, is good circumstances lead to bad sort of circumstances, and there's recognition when he realizes an important truth about himself, right, that why is he suffering from all these issues. Well, let's discuss the structural techniques that were used in Jacobean poetry. The first is blank verse. Blank verse was an important structural technique used in writing different sort of poetries in Jacobean as well as in Elizabethan age. What is blank verse? Blank verse is actually an unrhymed verse composed in iambic pentameter, right? What is iamb? We can say iamb is a pair of 2 syllables. In actually one line of poetry, we have got 5 pairs of such pairs, right? So one pair is known as iamb. And what is iamb? Iamb is a group of two syllables. The first is unstressed and the second is stressed. When such 5 pairs combined together in a line of poetry, such line of poetry is termed as blank verse. Fine. And penta, of course, we know means 5 such pairs. So you can see in this example 2 lines of poetry have been written over here, and that have been taken from Shakespeare's sonnet number 673. So the first line in this example, you can see, that time of year thou mayst in me behold. So the word that hasn't been highlighted, it means it is unstressed. The second is been highlighted, right, and underlined. The second syllable is stressed. Similarly, off is not stressed, here is stressed. So one unstressed, one stressed, they make up one pair. So we have such 5 pairs here, right? And another important thing of the blank verse is that the 2 lines of poetry do not rhyme, right? So such composition is known as blank verse. And we have got one exemplary work from this Jacobean period, the Duchess of Malfi, written by John Webster, that has written in iambic pentameter, blank verse. And we have also find in such dramas or in poetry the hero couplet. So what is the hero couplet? Hero couplet is actually the one difference between the hero couplet and the blank verse is that both are written in 5 pairs syllables. Both have the first unstressed, the second stressed, but the only difference is that the heroic couplet, the 2 lines of poetry, they rhyme together. This is the only difference, right, between them. You can see one example has been given here. The first line of the poetry is rhyming with the second line, right? Rhyme means that they have the same sort of voices, right? Sounds like dressed, pressed. Fine. Okay, we have an example from here, and the example work is Masks, written by Ben Jonson. As far as the themes of Jacobean drama are concerned, we have already discussed that there were dark themes. What are the dark themes? That they are grim and serious aspects of life have been portrayed in such themes. So these dramas have got darker themes such as corruption, moral decay, revenge, corruption, and the religious corruption, right? Different sort of themes have been portrayed in these dramas. And satire I have already discussed in the first slide. Here I have given the definition of satire for your convenience. And satirical works that we have discussed, why were they written? They were written to attack the intrigues, the corruptions, the flattery, the vanity in the social class, religious hypocrisy among the clergy, right? And we have very important famous work that is Volpone, written in 1666, rather it was published in this period, and it was written by Ben Jonson, the great poet of the age. And I have already discussed prose. So what sort of topics were brought in by the prose writers, particularly in essays by the prose writers of the age? One important work we have that is Advancement of Learning. It was published in 1605. It was written by the great Francis Bacon. So metaphysical poetry, very important type of poetry that was introduced in this age, and as well as it was developed. So this poetry deals with such topics or concepts that are beyond the existence of the ordinary physical world. And we can define metaphysical poetry, that the poetry that deals with the concepts that are not understandable physically, right? So they are beyond our physical understanding, right? One important work in this age that was that contained metaphysical poetry, that was Death Be Not Proud, It was published in 1633. It was written by John Donne, and it had a discussion on death and mortality. So the literary devices or the figures of speech used in Jacobean literature, we see conceit. Conceit is actually a kind of literary device or figure of speech that is used by the metaphysical poets. What is it? It is an extended form of metaphor. What is a metaphor? Metaphor compares two different things, and conceit is the intellectual comparison. It is the advanced form of the metaphor. It compares two different things intellectually in order to make a striking point, a dramatic conclusion it brings about. So one important work that contains conceit is the valediction forbidding mourning, written by John Donne. In this work he compares two levers to two legs of a compass intellectually, and that leads to a striking conclusion to the readers. So when a poet compares two different things intellectually in order to bring a kind of striking, astonishing end to the readers, that is indeed known as conceit. And we also discussed metaphor. Metaphor is actually the simple form of conceit, we can say. The advanced form is known as conceit, and the simpler form is known as metaphor. So one example to understand metaphor is, she is a lion. Lion is a beast, and she is human. When beast and human are directly compared, right, this comparison is known as metaphor. And actually, you also know about similes. Similes are indeed also comparison, but there we use words like as and like. For example, if we give you an example of a simile, she is like a lion. So the word like is used to compare two different things, but metaphor is the direct comparison that does not use words like as and like. So here are we have discussed all these important things in our lecture today. I hope you have enjoyed. So thank you very much for your listening. See you inshallah in next lecture.